Welcome to Salon Talks. My name is Nardos Haile, and today I'm here with designer Zac Posen to talk about his work for the Ryan Murphy-produced Feud, Capote versus the Swans. Zac,
Hi.
how are you doing today?
I'm doing good.
I'm glad to have you here. We're really excited to talk about this show and your work.
Thank you.
So basically, this show, let's dive into it because this show is about unveiling the inner society and high society of New York City through the eyes of Truman Capote. What did you learn about how fashion played a role in making or breaking 1960s socialite fashion in the world?
Well, fashion played a huge role. It's a character in these ladies' lives, in a lot of people's lives at the time. It's a very transitional moment in the history of style and fashion. It's a moment when the old world that we kind of think of is meeting kind of the contemporary world that we think about today. A lot of elements of like what we see in New York City today have parts that kind of existed then, right? And it's this combination, and it's a moment of a kind of formed formality in a society, in this one specifically, when people still wore hats and gloves, and that transition. And I use that, just as an overarching kind of theme to think about of this moment and period. New York, it was at this moment in history, New York and society was being challenged culturally and historically, and there was an incredible character and writer, Truman Capote. And Truman Capote had played and existed and kind of grew within New York society. He dreamed of it. He wanted to get to New York as a writer, and he was like a child star. Truman was a writer, he was a child star. He got attention for that. He then wrote other successful novels, some we know of. Breakfast at Tiffany's a little one.
Yep.
But then he kind of used that to enter into his dream world of that he'd always fantasized about. And like many other stories, it all goes back to the mother. And his mother really dreamt of entering into a better life and into New York society. She loved glamour. She was quite beautiful, and in fact, in her journey, she even left a young Truman as a child and came to New York and had this other kind of new life. And Truman begged her new husband to change his name, and that's how he got the name Capote. Mm-hmm. He got a changed name, and she kind of really desperately wanted to be part of this world. So he kind of used his career to enter in and befriend and become the center of this. And he was celebrated, and they loved him, and he was a great character and a great entertainer, and he was an it boy. And then he went away, and he went away to do a very unusual piece for a publication, and he wrote In Cold Blood. And at that point, somebody that had been celebrated became deeply respected, right? And it was a huge success. It was a huge transitional moment for him in terms of probably his self-respect, his ego, but he also, in this long period of time away, had a whole new perspective on this world that he so loved, that he was part of, but never actually really part of. He was always a guest.
Yeah,
and the entertainment.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely. And I mean, in your part of this world is that you're a costume designer for one of the episodes.
Yes.
You create the gowns for episode 3 for his iconic black and white ball. You've done costume design work before on the outfit. What was it like transitioning from the outfit to, Feud and getting to work with actresses like Naomi Watts, Molly Ringwald, Chloë Sevigny? What was it like to design gowns for them?
Well, so Truman got to this place and he said, I'm gonna throw myself a ball.
Absolutely.
And he started to kind of hand select, kind of who he thought was interesting, who he liked. Obviously, he had to kind of fill a certain quota socially, but he was going to throw the ball of balls. It was the rage at the time. just to give context, there had been other black and white balls that had happened, right? And it started to be a thing. He was throwing his. He had the money to do it, and he was going to do it. So when I came to start doing the costumes for this, the transition, there was some time apart. And this was a very different kind of project. I met the director, Gus Van Sant. He came over for dinner like a summer and a half ago, 2 summers ago now, I guess. And he said, I'm thinking, I'm doing some location scouting, Zach, and we're thinking about doing Truman and his ladies. And at that point I said, well, if you're gonna go anywhere in the realm of Charles James gowns, which a lot of these great ladies wore. They were the clients of the great Charles James, a designer who was very sculptural and construction, somebody that I understand inherently kind of the work he did. I'm your guy. And then he said, he texted me like a few days later, said, well, it's actually, I'm looking at like a later period of time. And so then I went into this deep dive into like Truman Capote, debaucherous at 54 with CZ Guest, who's played by Chloe, and these like very strange Ron Gallela photos. And then he said, well, maybe something in between that time period, a few years earlier, like what got him to that place. And it was like a tease. And he said, well, why don't you talk to Ryan Murphy's costume designer and executive producer, Lou. And then Lou came over, and I'm a big, big fan of her work. She's one of our greats. And I had pulled out kind of all my research, the beginning of it, which were like 35 books, kind of collecting all the different elements I could find about these ladies, not still knowing that. And we spoke, and she said, great. She said, I think this is going to be great. Let's hear what Ryan has to say. And then I waited, and I was like nervous, and I was like, okay, maybe it's not going to happen. And then I was at a dinner, and I was online at a buffet, and I looked there, and it was Ryan. And I said, Ryan, did you know that about this idea that Gus and I had? And he said, I want to know more. And he said, well, why don't you do the black and white ball scene? And then I waited some more. And so I was like, okay, well, this is not happening. And then finally, I got like a call from Lou, said, Ryan's back in town. Come to this address. We're filming a scene, and we'll review what you're going to do. And it was it was like a few days before Thanksgiving. And I came there, and it was in a historic building setup that I'd never been in New York. And they had recreated it as the great hairdresser Kenneth's salon. And it was like a full 1960s salon, and I got to sit in in an AD chair just to kind of watch behind. And I saw this scene with Callista playing Princess Lee Raswell, getting her hair done, and it was kind of magical, right? And at that point, I got called in. Ryan said, "Come on, let's go," and we talked, and we kind of laid out this idea of recreating the black and white ball. What would be the themes? What was I thinking about? And we kind of thought of this idea of creating an aquatic menagerie. That each one of these ladies was how do you elevate the theatricality of this, right? It's not per se a exact replica timepiece, right? There's artistic liberty. We're working through the world of Ryan Murphy, through the lens of Gus, and then in these new interpretations of these historic characters.
Absolutely.
So then I just got busy, and then I had to rush.
What would you say was on the mood board for each character? Because they're all so vastly different, but their styles are in this era of 1960s fashion. Yeah. My favorite was personally Slim's gown and with the hood and the black and
jumpsuit.
White. It's beautiful.
It's pants.
Really?
Yeah, because Slim wore pants. There are a few characters. So I went into crazy research.
Of course you did,
nuts.
Yeah.
I found VHS of a CBS recording of the entrances of the ball, which production hadn't had. Woman Deborah Davis, who wrote a great book on the ball, had that, and I was doing some kind of map out, investigation for this, down to material. I was trying to find dead stock materials that could match the time period. Finding flower blocks at the time that would have been from 1964. I really went there. It was kind of crazy.
Clearly.
So we were running around the city. I knew it was so quick that I knew I just had to get the materials. And then I build three-dimensionally. Slim, as a person historically, there was no representation that I could find, no illustration, no video, no photos of what she wore to the ball. Now, Slim was a real style icon, but at that moment, it seems that she went through a side entrance. She definitely was there. She definitely probably was like, apparently people thought it was not so much fun in actual reality, right? Lee Razzle had fun because she had a great date. And there's a million photos of her dancing throughout the ball, like her, and Katharine Graham, there's the famous photos of her in her dresses in the Smithsonian. So I had a lot of artistic liberty there, right? And I thought she was a great traveler. I thought like large, wide leg pants. There's the famous photos of her in a tuxedo and a red jacket, and I thought like, let's build on that. And I kind of came up with this like jumpsuit. And then this crazy, I was like, here's her entrance in this crazy taffeta hooded cape that sweeps in. I'm her walker in that scene. You can't see, but I'm in this like, we made this like kind of Michael Jackson-y tilted hat with fedora hat. And I'm her walker.
Lovely.
And I'm masked, but I'm
Easter egg for the viewers.
Yeah, exactly. I'm the one who swings the coat around in that scene. And that was kind of fun. But Diane Lane was incredible. Working with all of these performers, a lot of these incredible women I have had long-standing relationships with. Demi is like my soul sister. Like we have been working together pretty much early in my career, and we have a great collaboration. And Chloe, I've known, since my teens in New York, and have dressed her. I've never made costumes for her. It's very different. They are all these ladies. Naomi Watts, I've worked with and dressed her for many red carpets. It's very different. Working, and Molly, we became very good friends through this process. And Jessica Lange as the Black Swan and the apparition, was this, dream come true, and I'd worked with her, but I'd never made a grand costume that had to encompass every era in one outfit. I wanted to go from the teens, her time in the South, through her through up to the 60s in one outfit. It was a blast, and they all took it. They were all so nurturing. They take it very seriously. I mean, these are all actors at the top of their game, who, as characters themselves, are really strong, who are playing strong characters, understanding the balance between high theatricality, elegance of a time period, through Ryan Murphy production, through the eyes of like set by Gus Van Sant, are a lot of different elements. Anyhow, it was really cool. I draped these pieces on mannequins. I presented them to Ryan and to Lou. They would like give notes, approve it. We'd assign them. I patted the mannequins to the body. And then like 2 or 3 weeks later, we were doing fittings. I work with a freelance studio in New York that's incredible. I don't have my own studio. I'm like a one-man show with like a great creative assistant and some interns, and then this amazing studio where we quickly, over Christmas time, made them. And then come first week of January, we just fit them and we started making them. Then the masks were added. We made the masks. It was fun.
Yeah, it sounds like so much work. But I mean, I think it was just the best part of the show, in my opinion. I mean, there's nothing better than seeing your personal like touches in this work.
Thank you.
You're
I'm
welcome.
glad you got the 60s thing. That means a lot.
Yeah.
It was joyous. For me, it's a dream come true to work with Ryan. He's somebody we've met over the years for many, many years, and we really always wanted to do a collaboration with. And through this, I got to meet Lou and see her as like a master of building these characters and how she works. And I'm like, it's quite something. It's really down to every detail. But to be able to use an imagination and to go even just like, what are your dream black and white illustrations through history of different other masquerade balls, and kind of saying like, okay, how did we get to this masquerade ball, right? And you look at like Beardsley drawings or all these different crazy elements that got us here, right? Things from the 30s, and like just what that got you to that place and building each character is really, really cool.
Yeah. You've gotten to this place in your career now where you are doing costume design work. You are a designer. You've been a judge on Project One Ray. You have done it all, I would say. Did you ever think that you would get to this point in your career, or that it would go this way, or that you'd...
I always dreamed for it,
okay.
too.
Amazing.
I mean, yeah, I wish I'd had, I don't live with regrets. I'm thrilled I'm here right now. I still do one-of-a-kind pieces, and I'm always doing interesting projects. I love theater, and I love working with great Imagineers that are combined with entertainment, but artists and these performers that are at their highest level. Like, it's just rare in culture today, and in television, everywhere where something of production level is, I just have never seen it to that level of care on all levels. And to be a small part of it, I feel very lucky and humbled, and I had a blast the whole time through.
I'm sure you did. I mean, your career has been so long-standing. Your work is prolific, but you started in the industry at 16, pretty young. And looking back now, what would you tell yourself about these life-changing moments? Like, what advice would you give yourself? Yeah.
I mean, you can't crystal ball life. You can mood board, but it's gonna go, you can't control the weather. A really wise person, when I started a business in fashion, said, well, fashion's like weather and you can't control it, and I won't invest in it either. I think for me, I feel like it's just begun. Like, every different project is its own journey, and if you put your heart into it, it will take you to the next place. Sometimes things surprisingly find purpose in different ways, and you got to be open to the ride. I mean, you got to be in this for the work. I think for me, although there is such a showmanship to the work that I've done over the years, it's really about making an actor or a customer feel really beautiful and empowered in there. And I mean, I learn every time. That's what I keep learning every day. This project, 60s, or these shapes, this time period, were not something always like the most comfortable. Like, I was like, okay, like baby doll tubes, like that. Like, okay, like, it could be surface here, and like, but how do we up it? Because in the process, we came up with this word, Ryan Murphy fabulosity. Like, it all had to be upped. It had to be upped, and like more and more. And I was like, okay. And then we get with like the taffeta cape, and it's like entrances and that fine line. But this is just like, these are the cool things you dream about as a kid. I don't know. It really reminded me. I came back full circle. I created these in the studio in the loft in Soho that I grew up in. Then my dad's a painter, and I was like working in his painting studio within his space, like, so all like the paints are there, his paintings are there, but then I was like working within that, and it's where I started my company. It's where I grew up, and it was just like this full circle moment of being 4 years old, 3 years old, playing with my Legos and my sister's dolls and pieces of fabric and materials, and just building it in that way, and thinking of the theater that's going to come to play.
Absolutely. I mean, we are now approaching this kind of awards season, Met Gala season, all of the things that, keep us all busy, pop culture-wise. Some of your most iconic looks have come from these red carpet moments, like specifically the LED Claire Danes dress that we all love. What is it like designing for these women like Oprah or Michelle Obama or Gwyneth Paltrow? In your opinion, what is it like to, dress the most powerful women in the industry?
I mean, I like powerful people, right? I like people that take ownership in general. Like, it's very, it's fun, right? I mean, so I think it's always, again, it's about making somebody feel beautiful or empowered or strong or whatever they need in that moment. I'm there to kind of feel it out, right? It's like, I'm like you try to be like a dress therapist in a way, or I don't know, it's like that, that thing that, I used to, when I would work with a lot of performers, be like, well, what roles do you want to play? And then it's like how to think about that in some capacity to where they are now for something like it's like a teaser. So it's like a costume of red carpet life, which is not reality, right? It's all some interesting performance, right? I mean, I look at the videos of people going to the black and white ball, right? And it is so extra.
Absolutely.
But they're kind of understated extra at the time because of the time period of the style. It's very interesting. Like if you saw people showing up to like the Oscars like that, well, first of all, you'd be like, wow, what a stylish Oscar. But it would also look kind of over the top in a way, even though it's less over the top than they kind of look like they're understated in a way. I think when we look back at all of this in 50 years from now, it's going to look like its own interesting cultural phenomena of some form of pageantry. I don't know how that will reflect with our current, with how we look at our values of today culturally. What I will say is that it will always probably bring attention to some incredible performances and artistry. And as a designer, it's wonderful if your work can be associated with the work of the actor or artist that's wearing it, or First Lady.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, and now that you bring up politics, you're not one to like shy away from politics and the intersection of fashion and politics. You refuse to dress people like Ivanka and Melania Trump. Why is it important for you to take a stand like where you lie politically? And do you feel like it's your social responsibility as a designer to, you know, dictate whoever you dress or have opinions about these things?
Well, I think that as a gay man, for me specifically, with those dressings, that was really serious. As a business owner who, at the time, I don't have my business anymore, employed and also as a public figure that represented a openly gay man. I mean, I just represented that, and I also employed people, you know, of all preferences and identities. And, you know, that was fighting against it. So for me, in those kind of issues, that's really important when I had my own business. You know, as you find yourself in different roles within life, sometimes you have the ability to do that. But when I did take a stand. And I think that, you know, I think that's a really personal choice at the time. You know, I think that politics and having a brand have become very polarizing, even human brands. And for me, I think politics can be actually very dangerous on social media. And especially as we enter into our reality being blurred with AI and augmented realities, it can be very confusing as we are moving into another living force that is digital, and that, you know, the supercomputers have their own algorithms that can build names. I mean, it's a whole world. But I think we have to be really careful. I think the most important thing that I feel is to respect one another.
Absolutely.
And clothing can be a unifier for that, and beauty can be, and art can be. And if
agree.
that's my small place to make like people around the world think for 1 second, like to take them away from their everyday, if it's one moment in a show with a taffeta cape that's there that can connect, and they might even know they're not connected, right? They don't, right? Around the planet, everybody, you know, on Hulu that has, you know, the luxury to have Hulu or, you know, FX, like that kinetic, electrical, I don't know, it's like haptic osmosis.
Absolutely. Like you've mentioned, though, you've kind of like taken a step back from this larger fashion world, and you've been working you've been working like as a one-man show, and it's really shown. But people really miss your designs and your collections. Yeah. What would you tell those people that are still looking out for your work, and maybe share what you have planned for the future as well?
Well, I'd say, great question. Creativity is a lifelong pursuit.
This is true.
And I think that there's different periods of how that gets expressed. And I think it's really interesting and important to be able to take different stops along the train. I think that's important. It's not necessarily getting off, right? You're still in motion always. Planet's in motion. But it's like different elements of moments, right? I love making collections. I definitely will make collections in my future. How that represents itself, I like to have this perspective to look at it in a different way today. The amount of collections with this perspective that just exist in the world seems insane to me right now. It feels strange, and I think that there's other elements in other parts of a market that I'm just interested in right now. That's what I'd say.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Zac
Thank
Posen.
you.
It was great to chat.
Thank you.
I'm so excited for the world to see Feud
Thank you.
and your work.
Thanks.
Thanks again.
Yeah, pleasure.